Welcome, everybody, back to Soccerwise. David Goss and Tom Bogert here. As said in our Patreon earlier this week, I still think y'all are crazy for how much content you put out. Y'all have helped me understand the landscape and, most importantly, helped me enjoy this crazy league. That is us right now. We are here on Holiday Monday with a live show. 4 new preview videos have gone up in the last 2 hours. We have, I believe now, 16 videos up on YouTube. All of them are out as podcasts as well. 4 different episodes of season previews that we have done with 16 different hosts from around the Major League Soccer landscape. And of course, myself and Tommy Scoops back with you for a big Soccerwise. Tom, this is one of your favorite shows of the year.
Hell yeah, man. I love doing the Watchability Rankings show, and I love how much disagreement we had when going through our own lists as we did our votes blind. We're going to use your list, David Goss, and then I just get to sit on from a chair and just go, oh, I disagree. This is where I disagree. Oh, you should have had this. So I'm looking forward to that, too.
Monday morning quarterbacks. I still haven't decided if we're going to start from the top or the bottom. We're probably going to start from the bottom, but I actually hadn't gotten there yet.
Start it.
It's a big show. If you haven't listened yet, by the way, I think last Thursday was one of my favorite shows of the year. Yep. We were lucky enough to have Sir Matt Doyle come join us. He brought us his over-under points marks for every team in Major League Soccer, and we all 3 picked our over-unders. Morgan was kind enough to put it into a clean-looking grid that has been posted on social media. I believe the numbers and the lines have been posted to Reddit as well. If you want to go sort of test yourself, you can go to Reddit MLS. And someone was kind enough to make a doc that you can go use inside of our Patreon, in our Discord. So if you haven't already, subscribe, get in there. We just dropped, as we are crazy, our fresh new salary cap and depth charts. It has been an unbelievable amount of work. Shout out to Charlie Cheesesteak for leading it. I think it's Todd, Chris, and John as well who have really gotten dug in on this.
Absolutely.
We appreciate them wanting to be involved. We love that we've got a space where people who like soccer can get involved and do the things they're good at and try and help soccer fans understand this league a little bit better. They look a lot cleaner and fresher than what we were working with before, Tom, and I know you're already in there updating and trying to make sure things look what you're hearing across the league.
Exactly. This is, and particularly in the offseason, I think it's super valuable for fans because I'll be filling in where I know a team is, aiming to sign a DP9 or whatever, right? Like now that the season's about to start, I'm just keeping it on the field, but we have notes in there where, hey, is this team going to play 4-3-3 or 5-2-3? Watch out for that. And hey, like they're going to sign a DP9, just nothing's there yet. We'll see. These is the flexibility. So I love it. I have this open all of the time. Before we started Soccerwise, like, I had my own depth charts. You had your own depth charts. Like this is just normal stuff to us, or what we've been doing for the last few years, and it's been really cool that like so many people are like, oh, like I would love to see that too. So glad to have a reason to do it for Soccerwise.
To Richard Greenberg in the chat, for access to our Discord, you have to subscribe to our Patreon. Once you do that, you get an automated message. You reply back to us, and you get it there. It also gets you access to these depth charts and salary caps that we are talking about, and we are working on our VIP specials that we're going to be rolling out for the 2025 season across both MLS and NWSL fans and anyone else involved, including USL. We're going to talk about Division I a little bit here today. We weren't able to do it last week. Unfortunately, this is the way American soccer, North American soccer chooses to work. I have 5 podcasts that I've already edited and put together, and then a new league likes to drop the biggest piece of news of the year, and it's like, hey, when do you want to talk about this? And it's like probably between the 36 podcasts that we are putting out. So we're going to do it today because we already had Doyle booked to do the over-unders, and then we already had a bunch of our season previews rolling out as well. Of course, Jordan Angeli will be back later this week for us to dig into all things NWSL and get ready for She Believes Cup. We broke down the roster last week, sort of the big names that popped out to us, some of the big ideas that Emma Hayes is trying to put together. So you can go listen to that one as well. And then I think finally after, we have 25 to 30 guests that have joined us over the last 2 weeks. We're going to get back into some interviews after this once sort of these seasons kick off. Pull the mailbag back in, and we've got some cool ideas as well for some of our weekly shows. So, after saying all of that, Tom, are you ready to go to Kansas City for -6 degrees and snow for the opening CONCACAF Champions Cup? It'll be me, you, and Messi just out making snow angels.
Me, you, and Messi. I'll join you guys in Miami with warmer weather, and we can all watch together from remote.
Home leg only. That's what you signed in your contract when I signed you up. I didn't realize that.
No, I just went to the Soccerwise adults and said, I'm not saying anything, but it'd be a lot better if this happened.
Yeah, I'm not going. Pull Elias Manuel. I'm just not going to be there. We've got CONCACAF Champions Cup kicking off for MLS teams. We've already seen Liga MX and CPL and all these other teams get involved, and now it starts for Major League Soccer. We start, oddly enough, with 2 all MLS matchups on Tuesday night. SKC hosting Miami, where the weather, as I said, is supposed to be pretty hairy. And then the Colorado Rapids hosting LAFC for what will either be a redux of the Colorado TFC series, which we talked about with Mark earlier in the week in that preview about how brutal that game was, or it'll just be pure Costa Rica USA snow game. And then it rolls back around on Wednesday. RSL are headed to Costa Rica. Seattle finally get back on the field, but without Josh Atencio, which we'll talk about. And FC Cincinnati debut for the 2025 season without Lucho Acosta against Motagua. Vancouver has a matchup against Saprissa. And then this weekend, Major League Soccer is back, which kind of catches you out of nowhere. It is going to be drinking from a fire hose once it begins, and then we are rolling through with all of our weekly coverage here at Soccerwise to try and keep you abreast of everything. Shocker, Inter Miami is the opening game on Saturday, the early game at 2:30. LAFC hosts Minnesota at 4:30, which, as you will see in my watchability rankings, is a highly rated match in the Goss watchabilities. And then you roll into your normal schedule on the weekends. And of course, this year there'll be a Sunday game. I guess every single week. Honestly, I haven't looked at the calendar as properly as I should. Either way, Andrew Weeby's going to be on some of those. So we're going to be locked in for all of those. And of course, we're going to have Andrew Weeby back onto the show this week on Thursday. We are doing our Golden Boot draft. We are officially adopting it over from Extra Time Radio, RIP. And we are going to be doing it here at Soccerwise. We will then put it out as a graphic so everyone can track us and yell at us and hate us. We've already put enough, I think, lamination material out there with the over-under points show. But, Tom, we don't want people to feel like they don't have a reason to hate us. So we want more out there, right? Like, we got to put our name in oak. We should start carving these things, not even written in pen.
Let's commission
Throw this away.
Let's commission that. I think that would be a way to differentiate ourselves in the podcast world. So I think that'd be cool. While everybody's kind of figuring out the new technology, we're like, nah, bro, we're pivoting back to oak. Write it in scripture, pal.
The pivot.
I'm gonna mail you this, and you'll get it in 3 days.
I'm listening to a podcast as I fall asleep right now about Alexander the Great, so we could just start chiseling it into marble.
That's hilarious. Do
I know.
Do you retain that information?
No, the funny thing is I put them on sleep timer and I fall asleep like 10, 15 minutes in. I don't hear anything. So then when I wake up the next day, I rewind it back 15 minutes. So I'll run the same podcast for weeks on end. And then finally I'll be like intrigued enough that I'm like, I got to listen during the day.
I gotta focus on this.
Exactly. I want to actually hear this now. And then I got to find a new podcast to fall asleep to. You won't be falling asleep watching these MLS teams. Boom, transition. Nailed.
Bang.
We are going to go through our MLS watchability rankings. We are going to start at the bottom.
Can I do the methodology first? Just lay it out for people?
Talk to us about the science, Tom.
The science. We did our own research, and we came up with a rubric to grade teams across 6 different gradings. Quality, 10 points. A team doesn't have to be great to be watchable, but that certainly helps. Identity, score of 0 to 10. Look, Wilfred Nancy's free-flowing, build-out-at-all-cost style is much better than, if you remember, Gerhard Struber's car crash Red Bulls. Those are not fun to watch. So 10 would be Wilfred Nancy, 1 would be Gerhard Struber's Red Bulls. 10 points for off the field. That could be catch-all for the stadium, the atmosphere, the kits, whatever else kind of comes up in non-soccer items. This year for San Diego, I'll just spoil it. I gave them a 10 for non-soccer stuff because of the intrigue of an expansion team. I can't wait to see what they're going to look like. And then the 3 smaller categories, potential for spectacular moments, 5 points. That's, free kick specialists or individual brilliance that you never know if you're watching that game, whether or not somebody's going to do something crazy. 5 points for fatal flaws, a.k.a. the bad defensive teams get 5 points and the good defensive teams get 1 point because it's fun last year to watch San Jose, particularly beginning, middle of the year. that game was going to end up 4-2. It didn't matter who they were playing. It was going to be pure chaos, and there was going to be goals. And 5 points for involuntary humor. This is for Peter Vermees' GIF-ability on the sideline. This is for Bruce yelling at the refs. This is for Diego Chara's smile after he tries to get out of a yellow card because he kicked somebody. All of the above, involuntary humor, scaled on 5 points. So over those 6 categories, we have graded our teams. And David Goss is going to give you his rankings, and I'm going to critique it.
I have a few outliers in here that I'm not super happy with. And that's just the reality of sometimes the science. And, like, you don't know what you don't
Trust
know.
the science.
I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to make sure that I have this updated, by the way, to the latest because I've been tweaking all my points. Yes. Okay. So in last place, shout out to Gregory Roach, who did an unbelievable job from the Pitch Pass podcast of previewing DC United with me. I have DC United in last place. I'm going to give you a bank of 5 here, and then we could dig in. So DC United in last. 29th is NYCFC. 28th is Philadelphia. 27th is Vancouver. And 26th is Nashville SC for this season.
So we overlap. So I don't have DC last. I do have them in the bottom 5. Same thing with Nashville, Vancouver, and NYCFC. For me, DC can't be last because of Benteke.
Yeah.
This goes to spectacular moments. This goes to uniqueness. No team plays like DC. That doesn't mean that it's the very most watchable. It's not better.
Well, that was the problem for me.
But I agree. But so when there's 6 games on at 7:30, I know what I'm getting with it. It feels nice to have a little wild card.
Yeah.
And again, granted, a lot of it has to do with Benteke, so you can catch up via highlights, which is why that they're still in my bottom 5. But they cannot be last for me as long as Christian Benteke is on this team.
Okay. Who's your last?
Toronto at the moment.
Okay. See, you talked about fatal flaws. You talked about humor. You talked about potential for insanity. That pushed Toronto all the way up. It seems like, for the most part, though, the rest of this, we are fairly aligned. NYCFC, obviously, a huge tough part is, and Andrew Lee talked about it with us, I think his podcast is about to come out for us at Hudson River Blue. Playing a baseball stadium is not ideal. Playing a different baseball stadium is not ideal. Although, let's go Mets. Juan Soto in spring training, so got hypes. Get ready. You better believe I'm going to be at every spring training and Marlins game coming up over the next few weeks. But that one's a little bit tough. And then for NYCFC, if Santi Rodriguez goes through the way we think, like, it actually is one of the years in which I'm intrigued because of Pascal Janssen, and I'm intrigued by most of these teams. We're at that time of year, right?
Yep.
Like, you could bring up any team in here. Philly, for example, I have low down here. Is Kevin Sullivan going to play a ton of minutes? What does this team look like? What is this new DP? Like, you could sell me on most of these.
I totally agree.
Vancouver, I came out of the preview with Michael Micael a little like, things are stark right now, and I don't know what I'm looking at, and I don't think Pascal Janssen, I think that's a clear downgrade from Vanni Sartini in terms of watchability. And I don't know that the soccer elevates it over the loss of Sartini's personality.
Pascal Janssen, the NYCFC coach, of course. But I agree with
No, sorry. I moved between 3 things at the same time. You got to be able to keep up with the mind, dude.
I'm trying. We did lose a great character in Vanni Sartini. I was surprised how low I had Vancouver. Like, I knew that I wasn't going to have them in my top 10. I had them 3rd last, and NYCFC was my 2nd last because automatic 1 point for the stadium stuff. It's not fun to watch in Yankee Stadium. And that's obviously going to change very, very soon in 27 when they open their beautiful new stadium. But for now, that's what it is. And this year,
Tom's
they don't have
sure he's got a front row seat in the press box for 2027 debut.
You think I'm going? How often do you think I'm going to go from the Jersey Shore to Queens? Probably not often. Can I just give a compliment?
No, you
that
can't.
Doesn't have any ulterior motive?
No, everything's ulterior. I will tell you this: that stadium is going to be like 18 minutes from my house that I grew up in. That's going to be my spot.
Now you can get when you come back and visit. You gotta stop by. So Vancouver, I knew I wasn't gonna have them tied because this is not much new. There's a new coach, but like the roster set as is. Again, I love Ryan Gauld, so like that carries it for me. But you know pretty much how they're gonna play, what they're gonna do, and they've shown that their ceiling, unless that this new coach can find a new wrinkle, they've shown that their ceiling is like 6th in the West and a 1st-round exit.
Here's the thing.
It's probably unfair, but like I've seen this over and over again. And with the off-field stuff, with the owners selling and Stuart Armstrong leaving, a sense of looking like out of nowhere, and like it's just like, man, I feel like I've seen this before, and I know what your ceiling is.
Yeah, so one of my worries with them, and I dropped it down a bit, was I don't know that the atmosphere is going to be as good as it could be because I think the fans are going to be affected by that. The other was I would actually be more sold on the Vanni Sartini trying to throw all of this against the wall once again than I am. I don't know what Sorensen's style looks like, and I don't know how the players fit it, and I don't know if I'll be as entertained by it. Nashville, one of the ones that, if BJ Callahan changes as much as we think, could jump up this very, very quickly. But where it starts right now, and I think also the malaise in the fan base of like you turn a game on at Geodis early this year, I don't know if fans are back yet and sold until there starts to be some results and change. That's where that ends up. All right. My next 5, and this is probably a little low for them, but it has nothing to do with success this year. It has to do with watchability. 24th, I think is where I'm at, or 25th. New York Red Bulls, RSL, Montreal, Toronto, and then sitting right here at 21 is LAFC.
What?
Yeah.
I have LAFC in my top 10. I have Red Bulls right around the top 10. Go. So, you go first. Tell me why you're not really looking forward to those two teams.
So LAFC, big special moments, I have them at 4. Dennis Bouanga, maybe Giroud, set pieces, really, really high. Quality, I have them at a 9. Style, I have them at a 5. They have leaned further.
I have all of those same things. How did we finish so far off?
You have them at style 5? Then I have them 1-1 on the last 2. So for fatal flaws and involuntary humor, I have them 1-1.
So I have quality 9, identity 5, non-soccer stadium kits, all that 9, spectacular moments 5, fatal flaws 1, humor 2. How many bonus points did you give the teams ahead of them?
I have humor 1. I have non-soccer 8. I was 1 point less than you on everything, and that drops them down from spots. Well, that drops them down from 12 to 20. Yeah, it's really tight in that whole middle space.
No, that's fair.
I do think there's a world in which it's so fast that it's entertaining, right? Yeah. It's constant open field stuff with the new midfield and all of that. It is potentially super entertaining. Where it sits right now, though, I am worried that it's going to feel stale and close down. Maybe if Griezmann comes or Under is real, then maybe that gives a little bit more excitement, but I don't know that does it for me. And the loss of Mateusz Bogusz and Kike Oliveira is big, even though I love David Martinez.
Yeah. So, and our David Martinez hype train is going to have to slow down a little bit because Cengiz Under is going to be the starting winger. But on my end, Danny Bouanga is must watch. He's awesome. I did ding them on style because that can get older. That can just feel like it has one pitch. But if LAFC is playing at home, that's going to be fun as hell to watch. The atmosphere is going to be there. The kits, the Hollywood, all that other stuff. So they get points there. Again, the quality, I have it at 9 because I think this is one of the best teams in the league.
Agreed.
And particularly after the Cengiz Under deal. So this year, MLS teams will play around 24 regular season games before the summer transfer window opens.
Yeah.
That's more than 2/3 of the season.
Right.
So LAFC are saving a DP spot for Antoine Griezmann. They are still working on that deal. And Cengiz Under comes in as a DP on loan until the summer. This is an excellent piece of business. This is a player who has 51 caps for Turkey. He's put up real numbers for Fenerbahce. He doesn't fit the system that Jose Mourinho is playing, which is why I was told LAFC were able to get this deal done and why he was open to it because, all right, I'll go somewhere where I'm going to play for several months and I'll figure it out again in the summer. There's a purchase option here, but again, if they get a deal for Griezmann, Cengiz Under is a short-term solution. So I think that was really, really well done, and that's going to help a lot at the beginning. Olivier Giroud, I still am holding out big hopes for. We'll see. But that front three is going to be really fun. The midfield is going to be more energetic than, I guess, ball playing, which I understand where that knocks him, but I just think that off the field, spectacular moments and quality just really wins this for me.
Yeah, I think all that's fair. On the Under stuff, by the way, I'm a little surprised still that more MLS teams don't do this. That more MLS teams don't say, we think we're good, we're not going to make the big move. Can we get a loan for someone who's through this summer? Then we're going to get our guy, right? It's sort of an acknowledgement of you're not 100% here. We're not 100% committed to you. And then maybe sometimes it goes right. It's one of those combos I think we've had a couple times this offseason of I like that Chicago's left the spot open. Find out who you are, then you make your big move, or you see where Gutierrez stands and all of that. There's some teams where I don't mind leaving the spot open, but wouldn't hate having talent in there to fill it for 4 or 5 months, have an adult to help players. Under's going to help young players sort of fill in central midfield, I think, around Mark Delgado. there's a lot to like in that. Obviously, there is a portion of the fan base I think we saw on social media that is very upset about that. We'll continue to follow that story and talk about it if it's super relevant as things go along. But it makes sense for LAFC to make this move. I get everything you're saying. I guess I've just seen it before. Steve Cherundolo be successful. Like you talked about with coming back with Vancouver. It's obviously on a different level. It's way more talented, but that's where it sits for me. Now, for Toronto, they were second highest on the potential humor ratings, but they're also pretty high on special moments. Because, like, I'm not going to not watch Bernadeschi do something. If Insigne is on the field, I'm not going to not watch him step up to a free kick around the wall. But at the same time, the quality was low overall for the team where we sit right now, although they did make a big signing. We are going to get into all of our breaking news after this, and we're going to talk about a lot of the big stories that have happened since our last show. You've broken a ton of news around some big moves that maybe we didn't think would happen for some teams like Colorado, Houston, LAFC, and all of that. Montreal right behind because I'm intrigued by the project and like it's entertaining and interesting. And then RSL, it's just a tough start to the year. It's basically like a Diego Luna ranking and I'm just going to keep calling it Rio Tinto. I don't even care. A Rio Tinto ranking. Like, I enjoy that atmosphere. I want to watch him play. I don't know what else I'm tuned in for right now. And the Red Bulls we've known for a while, but they did get an uptick from having an Emil Forsberg and a Choupo-Moting and the potential to push for an MLS Cup. So my next 5 now, breaking through number 20, I've got Colorado, New England, Sporting Kansas City, San Diego, and FC Dallas.
So I have some of these teams in this kind of bundle as well. Again, like I said, I'd Red Bulls much higher than you do. So I'm trying to decide which to go with. So let's do San Jose. So San Jose, they have a ton of intrigue with Bruce Arena. They have a lot of new players.
To be clear, I didn't say San Jose.
You didn't say San Jose?
I said San Diego.
San Diego. All right, but then I'll go there. I have them much higher than you because, again, like, I'm thrilled to watch an expansion team. I can't wait to watch how they come together, what the first few games are, what it looks like after game 10. So, again, that's why they get a 10 from me in the non-soccer stuff. They have star power. They have Chuka Lozano, Anders Dreyer. Like, I'm very excited about those two wingers. Luca De La Torre, I think is going to be super fun in this league. And the center back pairing, I like, but I see a world in which either if there's an injury or maybe it takes them a little bit to get on the same page, there's going to be a team that's going to try to play out of the back no matter what. And there's some possibilities for high score lines early in the season.
I'm excited about all of that. I just have to see it like play out in league play of like, I need to see it go wrong for a game and for them to try it again. I know the idea of the club top down is commitment to this, but like the losses start piling up. This is where, so Kevin Case in here says SKC and Dallas seem high for him. That's where SKC gets bumped up for me, which is from a style point of view, I'd rather watch SKC shoot themselves in the foot over and over again than watch a better pressing team press. That doesn't mean that I knock that. Quite honestly, there's a chance if I ran an MLS team, I'd hire a pressing coach and I would play that way. But if I'm going to sit down and watch it on TV, I want to watch the expansive open teams. SKC's potential for fatal flaws is super high. My intrigue in them was ticked up a little by the 3 additions they made. Like, it does feel a little different. Last year, I had them further down on this list because it was all those things, but with all the characters I'd seen before, and I wasn't as excited about it. Dallas, to me, is one of the big outliers. Now, the off-field stuff is tough. Like, broadcasts at that stadium have not been great. They finished the construction. The fans came back. When the team is good, like, there's a good crowd in there. It's fun to watch. I've been to games at that building. Really enjoyed it. The broadcast setup is not ideal for the way they do it. And I don't know 100% what the team looks like. But if Bernie Kamungo starts scoring goals and Lucho's flowing and Petar Musa's flowing and some of the defense works enough to make it like a complete soccer team, but also maybe have some holes, this team could skyrocket for me pretty quickly.
So I have them, I think, 9th right now or something in some sort of tiebreaker in that area. Like, I have them with LAFC, San Diego, a couple teams that I already talked about. I think that this is going to mirror, the first half of 22 when Pat Noonan, Chris Albright took over at Cincinnati. The first half of the season, it was like 4-3 was a normal scoreline. I think that Dallas has the chance to do that because I will blindly follow Lucho Costa, Peter Musa, just the two of them. And again, they have pace around them, which I think is really smart. That'll fit well again. Bernie Kamungo, Leo Chu, Anderson Julio. 2 of those 3 starting at any point around your DP9, DP10 that are going to be so good. Like, I think that's an excellent setup. We'll see what their new center back looks like. But this is a team that struggled defensively last year and struggled personnel-wise to the point where Nico Estevez was playing as boring as possible because he didn't trust putting anybody in space. So I think that they'll look like that first half of 22 with Cincy before Cincy got Matt Miazga in the summer. And again, maybe the new center back is going to be their Matt Miazga, and maybe I'm selling them a little bit short defensively. But for watchability rankings, I think that there's a ton of possibilities for wide open games. And again, Lucho Costa, former 2 years ago MLS MVP, last year probably had slightly better season than his MVP year. And Peter Musa, I think, is one of the best forwards in the league. Yeah. That people, Dallas weren't relevant by the end of the season, so Peter Musa was a little bit slow to adapt and he hit his form the second half of the season. And I don't think a lot of people were watching Dallas at that point.
Someone put in the chat plus 3,300 for Petar Musa as Golden Boot winners. Not a bad number. I don't know what the numbers are.
That can't be the real. That's unbelievable. If that's
I can go in and look for them. Somewhere else says plus 9,500 on Evander as well. Petar Musa, I think, is going to pour in goals. I think my 2 that I feel really strong about who are returning from last year of like big increase numbers is Musa and Hugo Kuipers. The system around them is going to be easier. They have settled into the league. And I think Musa is better than Kuipers as a soccer player. I think he does more things. He can create more of his own chances. So, all of that's going to be super entertaining. It's going to be super fun. And if they play kids as well, which Eric Quill sort of has been asked to, and me and Buzz Carrick from Third Degree, we did our preview of Dallas. We debated a little bit where the academy stands right now. There may not be the players fully to do that, but if that's the case, then I'm sold completely. As well, on top of that, New England is just the big box of unknown, maybe even more than San Diego. But the off-field stuff's not ideal with Gillette, and it's just tough to get an atmosphere in there. Yeah. But if a lot of these pieces hit or don't hit, it could be wildly entertaining over the course of the season. All right, so now we're at 15 for me. I don't love all of the number. I don't love where everyone is in here. And for me, these are all either they're ties and it's just alphabetical order, or they're 1 point apart. So I'm going to read them out here. So tied for me at 31 points is Austin, Chicago, Houston, and St. Louis.
Boston, Chicago, Houston, St. Louis. So let me start with my disagreement. So I spent the first half of these rankings telling you these are the teams that I have much higher than you do. These are the teams I have lower. Houston is one of them. I love the play style, love the game model. There's just not enough talent right now for me to be can't wait to watch Houston.
But
Dynamo.
Jack McGlynn, baby.
I'm so juiced about it.
Jack McGlynn playing pickup soccer with the Houston Dynamo? That's what I was born for.
Micael going to Palmeiras
I know.
Is going to really hurt them. He was so good last year. So good last year. So I'm worried about, because if they play this style but they're below the playoff line, it's like with a pressing team where you say if you're 5% off, that kills you. Mm-hmm. For a possession-based team, if your quality isn't there, if you're below the playoff line, that really kills it for me as well.
And I do think a lot of the way it's going to kill them is the lack of goals, I think. The possession in the defensive third and middle third will be the same. It's the final third where it's going to be hurt, and that makes it tough to watch.
Yeah. And so the other one that I'm lower than you on is Chicago.
Yeah?
I don't have any doubt that they're going to be competitive and good. But part of that is that I think that they're not going to make really stupid defensive mistakes. They're just those are Greg Berhalter teams. The pros of a Greg Berhalter team is a system, defensive stability, and defensive stability by playing with the ball, and thus kind of killing games a little bit that way, and taking away risk for yourself defensively. Doesn't lend itself to watchability. If Jonathan Bamba is awesome, that changes it. But if they don't have that individual talent, and he's been really awesome in the preseason, I want to say, but if he's not a best 11 type player or somewhere near there, then it'll just be a system-based team that again is very good, very competitive, solid, doesn't take a ton of chances and definitely doesn't give up many chances.
I agree with all of that. I think where I scored them really high was some of the Well, one, I do think the special moments could be really good because not just Bamba, but I think Gutierrez is going to have a killer year. And that's a thing I'm going to tune in for. I think Kellen's going to turn it back around under Greg. And he is a set piece specialist. He can be an elite ball striker or passer. I don't want to feed too far into this, but you're going to have social media open while you watch Chicago games. Like, let's just be real. The discourse around it for the first few weeks is going to be just bonkers for people.
You want that?
I don't want it, but it's still
what are you
out
talking
there.
about?
It's just a reality, Tom. I don't get to live in the bunker that I want to. If it was my dream, it would just be you and me hanging out in a bunker talking about 2013 MLS Cup. Yeah, it's not the case though.
No, so that's part of what draws me off, because if I tweet anything positive or negative or indifferent about the Chicago Fire, I am automatically muting that tweet. I don't want any part of it, because it's so. This is like the first take stuff, where it'd be like rings coach, or just like, oh no, like LeBron can never be better than Jordan. It's like, all right, that's it. Like, okay, oh, this guy's like.
But admit it, if the new All-Star game was you, me, we selecting 4 teams that play against each other, and I would get the G League team, which I'm stoked about.
You would have, you'd have the Rising Stars team.
Yeah, exactly. Then we'd be killing it. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I think again, all of these were in there. For me, Houston, the style just outweighed so much more, even with the lack of talent. I would like to mention St. Louis in here, because I think St. Louis, all of the non-soccer stuff are off the charts, right? The stadium, the atmosphere, the energy of the games, all of that stuff. And the talent we saw at the end of last year, like if they hit the ground running from where they took off or they finished last season, they are going to be, I think, a must-watch game, because I think you're guaranteed a good game. Like, I think teams will come in and battle against them. They understand what they are, but like the floor is so high with them that I think they're going to be really entertaining. Shout out to Argon Wolf in the chat, who says, pausing listening to the Soccerwise podcast so I can listen to Soccerwise live. We're there, boys. I'm ready for soccer to be back. And we also had someone earlier, you gave a sigh after one of my 5, and they go, that's an all-time Tom Booker Soccerwise sigh. So your reaction was there.
There's a lot. That's a packed field. That is high praise. There are a lot of those.
One that you didn't hit on, Austin.
Yes. So I have a ton of intrigue there. And really quickly, what I want to say on St. Louis, because I've talked about how much I love Marcel Hardo, Cedric Toichert, Edward Leuven. Like, I really like that. What I haven't talked enough about is Thomas Totland is an awesome wingback. And people I talk to at St. Louis are saying the same things about Conrad Wallem. So if their wing, like, again, this is such like a nerd. Again, we're doing the watchability rankings.
The wingbacks are there.
I love those 2 wingbacks, and I think that's going to help kind of complete that attack going forward with the other players. Anyway, so I am with you. I do very much like St. Louis this season, both to watch, and I think that they're going to be a good team. Austin, you had another point?
No, go.
Austin, I do have a couple questions of how exactly everything fits. Will the back line be good enough for Nico Estevez to trust to be able, we can play possession, we can take more chances, and
we've
spot
seen
talk
him
Heinz
in his pass,
So, again, I don't think that's what's going to happen, because I know enough about Nico Estevez. He doesn't want to play like he did in Dallas. He does not want to play like that. He was trying to save his job. So, I don't, and particularly with starting anew at Austin, I'm certain Rodolfo Burrell is going to tell him, he's more likely to get fired for not playing possession-based soccer than he is losing games. So, I can see where it goes wrong, but I think that they're going to go down swinging, right? The front 3, like, again, I think Brandon Vasquez is a battering ram that has really good IQ and touch, and he can link up with other players. Like, the front 3 of Zuni, Vasquez, and Usman Bukhari, I'm super excited about.
With Danny Pereira behind?
Yeah.
I love Danny Pereira. Dessler is one of the best attacking fullbacks. If Gallagher gets on the field, he's up there as well, just like bombing into situations. I don't know exactly what Ozuni looks like yet. If he is, there's a possibility where him and Bukhari are such straight line runners and finishers that it's not as entertaining, even though it might be successful. I think I was way past you and Doyle on Thursday when I was like, I think Brandon Vasquez puts up double-digit assists this year and like shows all of his soccer. When he does those things, though, it is really fun to watch. He is a great playmaker out of the center forward position, and I love when Danny Pereira dribbles by people. But then the potential for the fatal flaws with them right now, based off all we've seen, still exists, and that kind of kept them up there pretty high. So now, moving past that bank of 4, I've got Orlando in 11th place. That finishes out the 10 through 11.
I thought so. Can I interject on Orlando? So what? Because I have them pretty mid-table, just because we know an Oscar Pereira team, again, more competitive than, say, Super Wide. Like, they're not going to lose games 4-3, or they're unlikely to do that, right? Like, so what pushed you to move them towards the top 10?
So I like watching professional athletes run through walls. So I like an Oscar Pereira team. But then you add in the fact that potentially Rodrigo Schlegel still starts at center back for this team, and Pedro Caese has big mistakes in him and huge saves in him.
Yep.
So fatal flaw, potential for humor, and competitive nature are really high. And I think they're going to score goals. I think Paslic is going to score a lot of goals this year, and like Eddie Atuesta makes them more entertaining and a little more open. Yep. I think this is going to be the Orlando team I most enjoy watching since Nani.
Wow, that's a great shout. And again, they have Croatian Andrew Wiebe on one wing, so there's a hidden category. If you sign somebody who looks like Croatian Andrew Wiebe, you get a couple bonus points. So now I get it. We had that tab muted, hidden, and now I see the bonus Croatian Wiebe points.
Now it's moved it up the rankings for you. So now we are into our top 10.
Woo!
Number 10, I have Patrick Ojemong by himself. No club associated, just Patrick, the Aussie god. Right there at number 10, I think it's pretty obvious. Zaha coming in.
Yep.
There's a ton of attacking talent on this team. If it wasn't at a football stadium, this might be number 1. Like, that's straight up how different it makes it. And yet the fans get it as close as possible for an NFL stadium.
So that's why I don't ding them for the off-field stuff. And one, like, light blue is my favorite color too, so that's an easy one. Sir Minty, when he's not holding a gun at you, he's hugging you. So they get bonus points there. But, like, I when I'm watching them play, unlike Soldier Field, unlike Gillette, I have to remind myself, this is where the Carolina Panthers play. This was made for American football. So this was one of the teams that I didn't ding them on that. But again, maybe that was Sir Minty and light blue.
So I think dinging them is tough because they're top 10 still for me.
Right.
And
fair.
I have actually 3 NFL stadiums in my top 10. So clearly it wasn't the only thing that restricted things. But I think it takes it a quarter step back. And at the same time, I'm going to be stoked. I'm going to be tuned in for all these games. I'm excited to watch Zaha. I'm excited to watch Ojemong. I'm excited to watch Pep Biel as a non-DP just add into the attack. The fan base is great. I really enjoyed our preview we did with Jorge of Top Bins. Like, this is a team that is must watch. Just ahead of them is Minnesota United. And I think Minnesota United's atmosphere took them that half tick ahead of them. And of course, drinking tea with Kelvin Yeboah. I love Yeboah. I love Robin Ludd. I love Joseph Rosales. There is so much about this team that I enjoy. I think the style this year will be a little bit high tempo and therefore a little bit open. The potential for fatal flaws is there because we don't know that the center back core is perfected yet. And so there's like this huge gap in central midfield and center back, but also a ton of quality. We've seen it together. I mean, I think last year, the last 5 games of the season, they were as entertaining as anyone to watch. And so, like, I think Kelvin Yeboah, to me, is must-watch entertainment in MLS.
Yes. I think he's going to be very fun. He fits in this team stylistically, and again, with him being the attacking star, the centerpiece, right? Like, for me, I can't have a team in the top 10 without a potential star. Like, I love the team is the collective is the star, whatever, right? For watchability rankings, I have to tune in. Like, he's a guy who has that chance. Robin Lode as well. If we want to... If I want to play devil's advocate, I could push back and say, hey, maybe that was just a hot run from Kelvin Yeboah.
Yeah.
How many penalties were part of that? How much of this is totally sustainable and repeatable? Again, I'm of the opinion it is much more likely that is who we're getting, but I think that there's an argument to be made, devil's advocate, of like, maybe let's not crown this guy just yet.
Okay. You and the devil can go and spend the rest. You could go to the bunker together. I'm not going to go anymore if you're not Team Kelvin Yeboah. And we're not on the same
devil's
team.
Advocate.
Yeah, I didn't realize we were on different teams. So I think that's fair. So 1 point ahead of them, I have 2 teams tied on 34 points, which is my number, by the way. So this is an exciting one for these 2 teams. The 3 teams I have from 6 through 8 here are actually 3 teams that I'm surprised ended up here and I'm still confused about. So let me go all the way to 6, which is Columbus.
Yep.
Then I have San Jose. Then I have Portland. San Jose is the least surprising one for me.
What are you doing?
San Jose
way too high.
such a wild potential right now. Like, you have the idea of either Bruce screaming at his players because he's got Joseph Martinez and Chicho trying to start in a front line together. I have no idea what that means for Amal Pellegrino. We've already heard them in the Lucho Acosta conversation. So it's going to be one of those where I think a lot of people are not going to know where they stand. There's going to be wide variance all the way through the summer window. If it's good, I don't remember the last time PayPal Park or whatever it's called now was like bumping, but it has the potential to. And then Christian Espinoza's must-watch stuff and talent.
Yep.
And like the team is much better, but this was the only team that got the full 5 points for me on humor and then potential fatal flaws.
That's beautiful. I love that. I think that fits them too. So yeah, I like all that ancillary stuff. I guess maybe I'm looking too far down, like Chicho and Joseph. I just don't know if that's. I hope it is. I would love for that front two to be a thing in MLS. I have my doubts though, and with Bruce Arena, so I wouldn't put the fatal flaws up there because part of my respect for Bruce Arena and why we kind of were going back and forth about is this going to be a playoff team or not after they set a league record for most goals conceded ever, is because I think that Bruce Arena will get a baseline of competitiveness, a baseline of we're not going to get embarrassed, and that doesn't help with watchability rankings. So I will say last year I had San Jose pretty high in mind, and part of it was because they were just getting throttled and all the games were open. And I was like, well, there's no variance there either. It's you know that they're going to lose. It's Portland, San Jose, 4-1. Like, that's what's going to be tonight, or 4-2. Insert any team on that 10:30 game.
I think right here we're debating a definition of the term fatal flaw. I would consider a fatal flaw to have players yelling at each other or players flipping tables of chicken and rice, players cutting the logo out of their warm-up top and showing up to training. Like, fatal flaw is not just slip in the back. Fatal flaw is shooting your team in the foot. And I think there could be some of this. And if there isn't, by the way, I think the team's going to be good. So it's the two options here are pretty high. It's closer to what I considered Portland last year. Like, Portland was either going to win or they were going to blow up, and that's what we saw in the postseason. I'm surprised I still ended up with Portland this high. I think the atmosphere just probably makes them a perennial top 10 contender. Of like, you're always going to watch Timbers Army, Providence Park. Like, you're always going to tune in for that when it's an option. And there's still such high-level talent in the attack. And then there's intrigue with DaCosta. Like, we're going to talk about it coming up, and I know we have some Portland fans in here. We've done the Lucho side of things for a while. Then we pushed Evander to Cincinnati. We've talked about it a bit. The DaCosta part is still the biggest unknown of this whole thing. At 24 years old, though, if he hits, it's really exciting. Jonathan Rodriguez is one of the must-watches, I think, in MLS. I think Santi Moreno's in there as well. Is there a shift away from Chara? Are they still as open in the back? So there's a lot there for Portland that I think becomes interesting. But a lot of the off-field stuff for Portland, I think, keeps them in contention up here. And then Columbus, you said, you don't have a top 10 team without a star. Does Columbus have a star?
Diego Rossi. I think he's best set to be a number, like a 1B or 2, like whatever you want to phrase it as. But I know that they're going to sign at least one DP, right? Like, so I think I'm keeping them in this because of Wilfried Nancy's style. Everybody improves under him. Like, again, we talked about Jason Russell Rowe. Will he score? If he started the starting center forward, he will score double-digit goals. But again, I do know that they want to bring in a DP9. That's the plan. So I'm comfortable keeping them in the top 10, just not towards the top 5 because too many unknowns and losing Cucho, losing Christian Ramirez is tough. So back to Portland for a second. They're going to be, like, they have to focus on defensive structure, defensive transition. I think that they're going to be less open. They'll be better defensively. I don't know how much better, but one of the pros for David DaCosta is, one, he's super flexible. He can play either wing. He can play as a 10. He can play as an 8.5, right? Like, Evander was, again, MVP candidate. So these are not critiques, but he was the number 10, get him on the ball, revolve everything around him. David DaCosta will do more work defensively and can play a couple different positions. So if they need to be flexible, they can. Like, they've been playing 5-3-2 in preseason. Part of that is Santi Moreno was had a little knock. Jonathan Rodriguez, I don't think he's played all preseason, but like, so, and Kevin Kelsey had kind of just arrived. Juan Mosquera wasn't playing. And obviously David DaCosta wasn't there because he hadn't been signed yet or wasn't able to play. So they were playing like 5-3-2 in preseason because their 4 best creative attackers were unavailable. So I think that they're going to be more pragmatic this season and They're still going to be a lot of fun to watch, but I think that's just kind of where I would push back a little bit with Portland.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Like, yeah. So here, I will say this. Portland and Columbus were outliers in overall quality in this portion of my standings because I think there was so much off-field, aka Nonce, Providence Park, all these other things. Plus, you bring in like dope jerseys, all those other things. Like there was a lot. I think
Phil
that
Neville
I like,
jiffability. Phil Neville jiffability on
right,
the sideline's good too.
that I like about all of that. Now we're into my top 5, and my top 5, I think for the most part is like I think these teams could win. There's
Let's
elite
go one
talent.
by one. Let's go.
So let's start at 5. It's right now Cincinnati.
I have them higher. But I think that's been a common theme throughout our preseason content of both points and everything else. I think that team is going to be incredibly fun to watch. I think Evander is going to cook so hard.
I mean, you know I'm here for Evander. Like, you know I'm already sold, right?
I know. And like, look, we're splitting hairs here, right? Like, I have them either second or third, and you have them fifth. Like, it's essentially the same thing, but good.
I don't really know where they're behind these other teams. I mean, I have them 1 point behind my next 3. I don't know what that 1 point was. I have 1 point less on non-soccer. I don't know what that is.
Probably fatal flaw. Like
maybe.
But I will say,
right, they're a little bit cleaner of a team.
Sometimes teams that are really good defensively are a little bit boring. And again, you trade that for being really good defensively. I think Cincinnati is the rare case of they're going to be really good defensively, but it's like a fun, aggressive style. Yeah. Like, because of the back three, because of how athletic that all 3 of the starting center backs are, Miles Robinson just goes and hunts, man. Teenage Hadabi is going to go able to go hunt because you have Matt Miazga behind you with you. And the way that they kind of push-pull there, that allows them to be more aggressive. So while they are, like, they're not sitting deep to defend. Yeah. And so I think that they're the rare, exciting defensive team.
And I have them for, as I said, I didn't have pressing teams super high. I had their identity and style really high, though, because they are enjoyable with the way they do it. I think I had them a tick below these other teams in special moments just because I don't know how long it takes for Evander to be Evander there. And so I'm leaving. There's a lot to like. I don't know. I mean, also, we're splitting hairs at this point. We're in the top 5. Like, all of these teams are right next to each other. Number 4, I have Seattle. I think I'm tuning into a team that I think can win Supporters Shield every week. I'm tuning into a team that I think has loaded up. I'm tuning into a team that there's a ton of intrigue off the field. And, like, what is Jesus Ferreira? If he hits at his high, I absolutely want to watch this guy play. A team whose spine is domestic, which is just not something we see very often, right? If you go Steph Fry, Jackson Reagan, you go into Obed Vargas, Christian Roldan, up through basically Jesus Ferreira as your number 1 creator into Jordan Morris. Like, when do we ever see something like that? And for the chance to be really good, you're never going to be upset for watching a Seattle game for like atmosphere and all that type of stuff and enjoyment. And they're going to play big games. This is one of those teams where it's going to feel like a big deal when they play other big teams because most likely they're going to be towards the top of the standings. So there's a lot to like there. There's a lot of enjoyment, and I'm excited to see this season.
I am too. I do like that they are a little bit different. And like, I think all of these teams in the top 5, top 10 have their own uniqueness. It's not like, one of these teams is trying to be like the Galaxy necessarily, or like Columbus, right? Like, everybody has their own different way that they're leading through. And Seattle's, as you said, is the domestic core, a really strong defense. But again, they're also not boring defensively. Again, I wouldn't say it quite the same as Cincy, but that stadium, that atmosphere, those kits, the fans, everything, man, like, that's an easy 10 out of 10. Seattle are like, dude, like, when you get a big game at Lumen Field, you know it. You know it's a big game, and you love it. So, like, that carries them, too. And, again, this is going to be a very, very fun team to watch.
And you add to that, and this is, like, maybe unfair or whatever it is. I mean, I don't know the science behind this, so maybe there's no such thing as unfair. Vancouver games are big. There are not a ton of Vancouver games that are big. It's a Cascadia Cup. Portland, if they're bad, is still a big game. Then you add in, most likely, you're talking top of the Western Conference with the 2 LA teams, Minnesota, like, it becomes a long list of, like, if Seattle's playing these 6 teams, it's a big game, and that's fun to watch. And as you said, you can sense it when you get there. Number 3, back on the scene, I've got Atlanta United. Oh, record-setting signings. Micael Almiron, when the Benz is bumping, it is as good an atmosphere as there is in Major League Soccer. I think it'll be back. It's must-watch for the record number signings. I think it's going to be must-watch. on entertainment. I'm not 100% sure how Ronnie Dyla opens it up and lets it play yet. So that was like a half point back for me, which probably lands them in third place. But like Atlanta is back, right? They're back on the scene. The party is back, and I'm excited to watch it.
I can't wait, man. Micael Marone, Manuel Latze, like everything that they've done this offseason makes so much sense. This is like I can't say enough good things about this team. Like we've had a couple false starts. Are Atlanta back? Aren't they? Like they're back, dude. They played Montreal to open the season at home. That is must see to watch the crowd react to Micael Marone's homecoming. Yeah, I can't wait. And that's in the 7:30 window.
Do you think they'll play "I'm Coming Home" Carmelo Anthony style?
They should. Maybe there's a Paraguayan tune to make it better, or if there's like an Atlanta-based tune. I think, but I would love that. I think that's a good idea, guys, and we should talk to Atlanta about this after. Cincy and Columbus kick off at home at the same time, 7:30. Those are also going to be on the screen for me, but Atlanta's getting the main screen because of that. And I think that's a good way to look at this of, again, breaking a tie immediately. Things change during the season, but particularly week one, man, you got to have eyes and ears on Atlanta United.
Cole Rosenbaum in the chat says, clipping of Tom saying Atlanta is back in case I have to make a low light video for Atlanta this season. Yeah, I think that's fair, but also if we're going to trust anyone, on this show, we're going to trust Chris Henderson and Garth Lagerwey. Yeah. That takes us to number 2. Probably would have been number 1 if everyone was healthy.
You think so?
But the LA Galaxy are number 2 for me. If Ricky was healthy, yeah. Reigning champions, the way they play. Also, Josh Guessman said this on our show where we previewed the Galaxy, and I completely agree. I think the overall style is going to be different without Ricky. It is going to be a little bit cleaner, a little bit safer, a little bit tighter as a style. Fair. Not just to recover, but like no one is Ricky Puig, and so therefore they're going to play a little bit different, and they're going to be a little bit more combative. And then you add in Payne still being hurt, and like we don't know how long he's out and what that looks like and all of that. So they're number 2. That's pretty high. Fatal flaws, they're obviously an elite team in all of that. Non-soccer, it's a great atmosphere. The jerseys are always on point. Christian Ramirez is back home. Like there's a lot to like about this team. Plus they've just reemerged. They've won that championship. We don't know what back-to-back championships can look like in MLS. So, like, there's a lot to love about all of this. But I think because of the injuries, they're 2 and not 1.
Yeah, so I see the argument for them being 1 if they were full strength, but I still would. It would still be Miami for me. I know very clearly that's who 1 is because we haven't talked about them yet. But so with the Galaxy, I think that they're going to be a lot of fun. Like, I love the Christian Ramirez addition for them, the way that he meshed with the Columbus Crew stars. Like, he's going to do that here. And I think that front 3, when Painstill's back fit, between Ramirez, Peck, and Painstill, it's going to be really fluid. They're going to have some tendencies like in Columbus, but overall within Greg Vanney's game model. So that's going to be super fun. I hope that Marco Royce can play a lot of minutes because, particularly without Ricky Puig, that's going to be great to have. But the midfield is definitely more athletic, combative, like you said, like with Sean Davis, Elijah Widener coming in. There are going to be games where they could do Edwin Cerrillo, Sean Davis, Elijah Widener. And then, like, rather having a 10 in there, like Ricky Puig is. So there's going to be a little bit of variance there. They're going to have a little bit of tweaks. But like you said, there's just so much to love with this team.
And as you spoiled for everyone, Inter Miami are number 1. I will tell people this, if you're listening. We haven't really talked about Inter Miami a ton in the offseason. It's just so chaotic. We talked about it as there was sort of the Game of Thrones at the top of things. They are obviously elite for talent. Messi and Suarez and Alba and all the other options there. They will probably open up the game, although identity, I had them pegged down a bit just because I'm not really sure, and it's Javier Mascherano, but I guess Messi's the coach, so it's his style overall. The potential for fatal flaws is super high based off the Atlanta playoff series. So there's that, and then humor's up there because it's either like you're chuckling to yourself because you're watching Messi chip it over players who are laying on the ground, or it goes wrong, and I think most people are chuckling to themselves as well. So it is must watch. I'm going to be tuned in. I can understand people saying, like, it's shoved down my throat, it's too much. I would say this would be my comparison for you. I eat some form of shawarma bowl every single week, probably multiple times a week, whether it's shawarma flavored veggies, chicken, fish, whatever it is. Just because there's a lot of it doesn't mean it's not good. So I still like it, even though there's a lot of it for me to consume. And that right there is my comparison for you.
So I agree. I wouldn't have said those poetic words because that wouldn't have come up, but well done, Gus.
Thanks.
That's the thing. Like, don't overthink it. This would be zagging just for the sake of zagging. Like, just trying to be different and working backwards of like, I don't really want to put Miami first because there's stuff like those criticisms are fair. Yeah, we do get too much Miami. That's why in Soccerwise, you're pretty much covered anywhere else that you look. We're treating them like every other team. But let's not kid ourselves. Let's not overly correct things. They are clearly number one. Lionel Messi is the greatest player of all time. He is playing for Inter Miami. You said you don't know what to expect with the identity. What are you talking about? What else would Javier Mascherano play with Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, Sergio Busquets? It's going to be a 4-3-3, or if it's the 3-5-2 with Messi playing centrally sometimes. They're going to be possession-based. Messi's going to walk around. He's going to do some incredible magic. And then Segovia, Redondo, Benga Kramaski, all those players are going to have to do a lot of running.
Yeah.
Like, we know what we're going to get, and it's really good. It's really fun. And they're beatable. They're susceptible.
Right.
There's like, again, they set the points record last year and lost to Atlanta, a completely underhanded Atlanta team. Like, with Brad Guzan renaissance. Like, that was wild. There were so many games during the season where they would scrape points out because moment of magic from Messi. But there was also some
wild games.
There was also some where, like, it was a Suarez tap-in or a defensive mistake from the other team. And it's like we were saying with Doyle on the over-under pod, I was like, yes, like, when you have Messi, you're going to break XG models. I don't think to the rate that they did last year is super sustainable. So I don't know exactly where they're going to. If they're going to be towards the top of the East, but like, I think that there's variance here too, because like if they were just completely dominant and going to win every game and set a points record again and do it more boring, like without some of these like late game heroics or disappointments, this wouldn't be as fun to watch because it's just like, all right, cool. How many times can you watch Manchester City beat Ipswich Town or whatever, right? Like, so the difference here is like I feel like on any given week, whether they actually do or don't, I feel like they can be beaten.
Yeah, you tune in when they play the Revs. Because you're like, there's a chance that they could give up 2 absurd goals and go down 2-0, and that's not always the case for a team that's the best team in their league. We said we'd do this quickly. We started on a high, and then we got stuck in the mud, and it was really, really fun. I would love to hear everyone else's responses, so you can comment on this video. You can put a comment in the podcast. You can join our Patreon. It gets you access to our Discord, and you can chat with us in there. It's been electric. It is going to be the spot to be on Saturday and Sunday to just react and enjoy and chat with people about Major League Soccer being back and soccer being back and all of that, I'm sure, through the CONCACAF Champions Cup games as well. If you want to hear a little bit more about any of these teams that you felt like we went through too quickly, we did a 25 to 30 minute preview on 23 of them, I believe, are out so far. Oh, sorry, 16 are out so far. By the end of tomorrow, I believe 23 will be out. So we've got your coverage all across it. Videos on YouTube as well as full podcasts with timestamps for when each team begins.
You joked that we kind of got stuck. That was unbelievable that we went through 30 teams in like 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
This
like
league
that
is wild.
I think we did very well to not get stuck. I could have been talking to St. Louis wingbacks for a lot longer, and you helped push me along. The timing there I thought was excellent. Don't even critique yourself there.
And I didn't even mention Pedro Amador, so you guys are lucky that we were able to get through. But if you didn't think it was enough, potential in 2 or 3 years that Soccerwise will be covering a second first division in North America. The news breaking late last week from Paul Tenorio himself, one of our GOATs, that USL is seeking Division 1 status on the men's side somewhere around 2027 or 2028. Reminder, the Super League on the women's side gained Division 1 status, so there are 2 Division 1s in the United States on the women's side, NWSL and the Super League. So far, the Super League still in its first season. It did flip the calendar, so they played through the fall into the winter, took a break, and now it's returned again, I believe last week. Shout out to Fort Lauderdale United and my local squad up here, and Brooklyn FC. Don't worry, I've got a lot of allegiances across all of that. The news coming out in I believe it was comments from Paul McDonough, who is the head of soccer, or excuse me, the head of everything, I think, at USL. I shouldn't have said it that way. There is still a lot to know about this. There's a lot to learn about this. Tom, what's been so far your initial reactions or conversations?
So the conversations are interesting because a lot of people, so let me start with the positive. I think this is very good. If you want competition, if USL has real ambitions and designs on pushing MLS, the only way in my mind that happens is differentiating yourself. And you differentiate yourself by changing the calendar first. I feel like that they already missed that opportunity a little bit. And more importantly, promotion relegation. Paul McDonough said this to Paul Tenorio and said, we're still on track. Honestly, I don't have the direct quote in front of me. He's to the effect of, I kind of wish we did it already, or I kind of wish we were further along in there. Something that I've heard is new ownership groups, whether it's expansion or teams changing hands, it's what has been described to me as non-negotiable. You have to be in for pro rel, so that the more ownership groups change, the more you can get the yes votes to get that passed. Me and Jeff Reuter reported probably a year ago, I think it was like last April, that USL were about to vote on pro rel, and they're only bringing it to a vote when they know they have the votes.
Yeah.
After we reported that, the next week, delayed it, took it off. So they thought they were there, and they weren't. So this is another move to that because, as Paul Snorter reported, the D1 sanctioning, what they would want is a 12 to 14 team D1 league. So you take the best of the USL Championship and the clubs who are really pushing for pro rel, and the clubs who are really pushing with, like, let's build a stadium, let's build this infrastructure. So
Yeah.
I think this is all good. I do wish that USL did this in 2022.
You wish they had already done it.
Yeah. Because again, like, if you're going to push MLS, this is how you differentiate yourself. And they've had this vision, these plans. They probably hoped that they did it a couple years ago as well. But this is obviously really, really difficult, really big things. It's not necessarily critiquing them because logistically this is very, very difficult. And there's so many people to talk to and figure things out. But this is the way.
Yeah.
Because if you just try to be MLS, you're not going to out MLS.
Yeah.
What you need is the differentiation of pro rel and the counter.
I think there's a million ways to read this. I'm reading it from the outside, so I'm still not sure what this is. I think what you're saying is a ton of intrigue with it for me. There's a few other things that popped in my head quickly. First was their broadcast deal is coming to an end. I believe it finishes at 2026. So having an announcement like this is a good way to start new conversations. And I think I've heard things in the background of, like, they believe a limit on the amount that they make on broadcast deals and how lucrative their broadcast rights can be is that they are considered a minor league by some of the big networks in the United States, which I think fair and not fair. Like, there's a massive extent of this that I just think people don't understand. And I still believe if USL just said, I don't understand the championship thing. I think that was like the most random thing to do. Like, what are you appealing to people who know the English structure? Just say you're a big league and put together good atmospheres and have good games, and people are going to accept it. I think the broadcast deal is a big part of this. I think, as you talked about a little bit, the schism inside of USL is a big part of this, of, like, you have to look at things and say, if you're the Louisvilles and the New Mexicos, you have to look at the Loudons and the Miami FCs and say, you have to be with us. Like, we cannot go to basically a high school field or an empty college football field and play half of our games in this atmosphere. We want it all to be cohesive and look the same. And if you're not, then we have this new league that the top 14 teams are going to go into, where we all have soccer-specific stadium and we all are pushing our product and we are doing the right things off the field to make good players want to come here, and the atmospheres are good and we're pumping everything as strong as we can. And I think that is probably part of this as well, of sort of like internally the league looking at it and saying, these are the standards we need, these are the levels we need. And you skim through it. And by the way, we're talking USL, so I have to plug John Morrissey here. He writes at Backheeled. You can listen to the USL show. You can follow his Substack, all those things. I think it's must read all the time. He's sort of talking about the teams that can get in here, and they are the teams you want to watch. If we did the watchability rankings of USL, it would be the top 12 to 14 teams that you're talking about being in a potential D1 because of the atmospheres they've built, because of the way they play. So I think a lot of that to me was sort of what came up first. And I was thinking about, as this happened outside of the Major League Soccer structure, the pro rel thing, to Paul McDonough's point and sort of quote, it's like, you don't need D1 to do that.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do it, and I think Jonathan Tannenwald had a pretty good thread about this, whatever social media platform it was on.
Blue Sky.
Blue Sky, shout out to the Skeets, where he was like, if you
Tannenwald.
want to do it, do it. You don't need this to do it. And I think that's fair, because I also don't know if it gets done in a structure in which a team can jump from League One eventually to the first division if you have these setups of the requirements, which is a huge part of this. The necessity, I think it's within the first 3 years to have teams across all three major time zones in the continental U.S., stadiums that are 15,000 attendance availability or higher, and then, I don't know, 40% of the ownership has to be of a net value above $40 million or something like that. you have to find ways to structure that into, if you get promoted, you have to be able to hit those things, or you have to allow US Soccer to take those parameters off if you're promoted because of competitive nature and all of that, which I think is super fascinating. I would be excited to watch all of this. I think there's been a lot of capital, and by capital, I just mean human energy or resources wasted on the soccer wars in the United States. That's Major League Soccer's fault. That's NASL's fault. That's USL's fault. Like, that's everyone's fault. And I find it unfortunate to think the idea that there'd be more wasted. But if it is the only thing that can push things in the right direction, then I understand. I think there's a lot of reasons USL does this internally. And I'm curious to watch the next few steps. I think we're going to start to pull some guests in to talk about this, but like, it was one of those things that flashes across and you're like, this is insane. And then there are no details behind it. And so you're sort of, I think we're still waiting a little bit to see what this looks like and what it could be. But it'll be really interesting. I worry a little bit that like, you've built some really good things. Like Louisville doesn't exactly hit those parameters. So are you now messing with the good things you've already built, which is like, you go to a Louisville City game and the entire experience and atmosphere is what you want. That's the dream. It feels big. It looks good. It's fun to watch. You walk to the stadium and you have a good time. And I think you have a bunch of those. They're right outside some of these parameters. So are you now leveraging that and then in a situation in which you're overspending to build 2,000 more seats and change the stadium structure and all that type of stuff? I worry a little bit about that, but my hope would be US Soccer has a way to fit kind of these in within that and be like, yeah, no, we're not going to make this team that's a fully fledged professional team in their market adjust this 1,000 seats just to hit this requirement that is borderline arbitrary or completely arbitrary. That I'm not sure of because I've never really seen any of that behind it. Okay. We ready to dig into some news and get out of here? Because I told my wife we would go to an art festival that we are already late for. And let's start with this. Kit release. Any big thoughts?
No, I mean, every year, you know, there are ones you like, the ones you dislike. The Real Salt Lake one, as you're pulling up, that is one of my favorites. That is incredible. LAFC's away kit is gorgeous as well. There, you know, I don't want to go down the list of every single one I like.
Look at that right there.
That's so good, dude. That's so good. That's so good.
Boa Vista Salt Lake? Let's go.
Boa Vista if they paid their players.
I'm going to be stoked about this when I'm out on the fields with all of my Venezuelan pickup team, and they're like, what team is that? And I'll be like, it's the team of former Sergio Cordova, you know? Jefferson Savarino.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. So, yeah, I mean, again, there are kits I like, kits that I'm fine with, whatever. What about you?
I love that one. I think this is one of the best years we've had. And I think we'll probably put something together here that we can put out in like a cohesive way. I think that this is one of the top years in MLS in that there feels like more variance than normal. Sometimes it's like, don't call something stone when it's a gray jersey. You know who I'm looking at. You know who I'm talking about. Like, don't try and get me excited about that in that way. Just admit it and be honest. But I think overall, it was a really, really good year. I am stoked about that RSL jersey as well. It's going to go up in the background and up in the wall pretty immediately. Now we can get into the players who are going to be in those jerseys. Let's start with Portland. Tom, give us the news first, and then we can get a little reaction.
The deal is done. Portland Timbers have traded Evander to FC Cincinnati, and they have signed David DaCosta from loans. That deal is around $6 million, give or take. This is a 24-year-old player who was homegrown at Lens. He's the only club he's been at, and they believe that he's going to hit another level with different responsibilities, different atmosphere, everything else, that a change of scenery is going to be really, really good for him. And he's a player who, as we said during the Watchability Rankings, he can play several different positions. He's going to do more against the ball. He's not going to score as many goals as Evander did. They hope that he can do the same creativity as Evander. But this is, while it's a DP10 for a DP10, it isn't like for like because there is not many like for like replacements for Evander. So David DaCosta is going to be a little bit different, give them a little bit different options for Phil Neville. And again, hopefully a more cohesive defensive unit starting from the front.
I also wonder if it's a more cohesive offensive unit of... He seems like a bit more of a passer and like knit things together where Evander was more of an individual 1v1 talent or is. He will play in Major League Soccer this year. Like Evander was elite 1v1, take-ons, creating his own chances, shooting from distance. If Costa's more engaged with the rest of the team, I do wonder if that actually makes the team more successful both sides of the ball because you're losing the ball in more obvious areas. You are in better counter pressing positions. Your offensive marking is a little bit better because you can anticipate a little more what you're going to see in your team, and it knits the whole thing together. What's tough is a 24-year-old coming into the league at this point of the season, or, like, he's not going to be a part of preseason, is going to try and jump in and learn on the fly. Already. It takes a couple of weeks for sure, but we're talking about this thing started 5 weeks ago.
And that's why Portland are frustrated with how long they had to wait for Cincy to sell Costa to buy Evander, and then the deal was essentially agreed, and then there was a couple little finer details that held up Cincy. And in a perfect world, like you said, it would have been weeks ago, I was assuming these deals were going to be done Thursday or Friday morning. And so those are valuable days. They cannot do the visa process until that deal goes through. So Portland were pissed of like, hey man, like, we have our new side. Like, we've done everything right here, and we want to get this. Like, guess what? Evander gets to just Acosta gets to be in preseason immediately with Dallas. Evander gets to be in preseason immediately with Cincy. We're the ones who have to wait out a visa appointment. Can we, have a little bit of urgency here? So we'll see exactly when he's able to debut. But he is coming from Lens in season. He's been training. He won't have to ramp up entirely. A little bit different from leaving team training with Lens and then getting here, whatever. Right? It'll be a little bit slower, but it's not like he's starting from scratch. So that's the hope there. But again, Portland are excited about this player.
Yeah, it's the one with the biggest variance because he hasn't played in the league before, so he has to learn that. You have to see what it looks like, plus the timing it takes to come in and be available and all of that. I think it's nice for Portland in that because it was so drawn out, they were locked in on the part they wanted, and they were able to do the research and take the time to be like, this is the piece we want. And he's coming into a team in which Jonathan Rodriguez is a high-level designated player. Diego Chara is still there. As I've said many times, I think Santi Moreno's one of the best attacking pieces in this league. So the pressure's not fully on his shoulders to carry the team, and I think that's a good way to get involved, but I don't know the floor for this squad. Like, if you told me Portland didn't make the playoffs this year, I would not be shocked. If you told me they were competing for a home playoff game, I also wouldn't be fully surprised. So there's a wide variance there, and a lot of that is going to fall on how long it takes him and how high his ceiling is this first season to get involved. And a lot of that's going to fall on Phil Neville and the structure of the team and what he's able to do outside of just DaCosta carrying things.
Yeah, I agree. And then on the other side of this, with Evander and Cincy, it was made clear to me that Portland were ready to move on from Evander this winter before Evander's critical tweet thread about the club, saying that the fans deserve better. On everything he said after they lost to Vancouver in the playoffs, Portland were already like, we don't know if this is the guy to build around for the future because we don't think that he wants to be here necessarily. They had contract. They redid his contract once. There's already been like a lingering, like again, Evander says that there was unfulfilled promises. So there was like lingering tension on both sides. In September, they thought they had a deal agreed. They thought they had a new contract. Let's move forward. Everything's good. And Evander's camp thought that there was one more detail that Portland didn't think. So once that fell apart, because both sides thought they agreed and they didn't, I guess. And again, on Portland's side, they'll say that they did agree, and it was, again, that would have been their highest paid contract ever. It would have been like a little bit north of Denny Bouanga. And then once that fell apart, that was when Portland were like, all right, like, does he want to be here, right? Like, if he wanted to be here, he would have signed the contract. He wouldn't be asking to put in a release clause if he wanted to be here. So that's where Portland were, and they identified DaCosta not that long after that. And they were immediately after their season ended, they had a scouting trip ready to go and got to know him better and meet him. So this wasn't a like, oh my God, he criticized the club on Twitter, like, gotta go. The relationship was already kind of broken before then. And then like people would, like I was saying it this winter, there was at least the idea, hey, maybe both sides can apologize. Let's see if we can move forward, whatever, right? It didn't seem realistic, though that was a possibility. And now Evander's to FC Cincinnati. FCC gets a fresh start, clean slate with that front office, with that team. I have no doubts in season one that he's gonna be like completely bought in, completely ready to go, all that stuff. Like I think that he's gonna be awesome for Cincy. But that's kind of where Portland were and Evander was. It was just time for this to come to an end.
I told Kevin Wallace to start our segment about Cincinnati, which I think our preview is going to come out tomorrow morning because we were waiting for this to happen to record it, was just all the coping mechanisms you learn dealing with Lucho maybe don't bury them. Just put them in the attic for now because they might pop back up in the next year and a half, 2 years. And I think Cincinnati will take that. They're in win now mode. Evander gives them the best chance to win a championship in 2025 or in 2026. And if it doesn't end the best way after that, that's probably fine because like the goal is right in front of you, and that's the most important thing. And he was as known quantity as an option as you were going to get, so it makes a ton of sense. And I understand the move, but I think it's for all parties finally moving on. It is a delay to the season. Like it's going to be a delay to all three of these teams. None of these teams are going to hit the ground running the way they want to. It's unfortunate, but it probably worked out the best case scenario for all of them in the end. I mean, for Dallas for sure. Like getting Lucho at the number they got him in the league, in the situation they were put in because of how late the Velasco stuff happened and outside the plan and all of that. This is a really good scenario. And then I think for Cincinnati to say, if the Lucho stuff's going to happen and we're going to end up with an MLS MVP finalist at his quality, that's a pretty good one. And then for Portland to finish on a 24-year-old who your hope is they want to be around for a while, right? Jonathan Rodriguez and Felipe Mora, you're like in their prime towards the end DPs. The point of Evander was someone to like build the whole thing around for 5 years. Your next Diego Valeri, whatever that is. And that now could be DaCosta, which is the hope for this team. Let's stay in the Pacific Northwest, but go to our next move. This one completely caught me off guard. Every time we think Colorado's done, they add another one. This time it's Josh Atencio traded to Colorado or a cash for?
Cash. No, trade. His allocation money, it is, I believe it's 1.3 million.
That's a lot. That's why I thought it might be a cash for.
No, but so he'll retain his U22 status with the Colorado Rapids. So it was 1.3 GAM plus add-ons. They generated around like I think 750,000 plus a couple first-round draft picks in trading for international roster slots. So the same way that Seattle pretty much funded the Jesus Ferreira trade by trading international roster slots, Colorado did this year, and I think that that's an important part of this because we talk about the domestic core for both of these teams. And it's not just that we're being, super patriotic about, like they're producing players for the U.S. national team, whatever, right? There's a competitive advantage if you do it right, where not only do you not need all of your international slots and you have to go, like, you save money by not having to buy them, you just generated enough money to go sign Josh Atencio. And Seattle did this with Jesus Ferreira. And Nashville have been doing this for years. So I think that that's an interesting wrinkle to this. But the top line is Josh Atencio. It's going to be, I think, a really good fit for the Colorado Rapids. Seattle, Colorado have tried for him in the past. Seattle have not wanted to move him, but just the reality of this dude is too good to be a backup center back in the second or third six. He's going to play a lot more in Colorado, and Seattle got a fair valuation, so I think it works, makes sense for everybody.
This is one of the realities of building a good academy that comes up every once in a while, and I think it's worth the conversation of they're not always going to be great academy players that join your team, but the asset here for Seattle is the same. They got $1.3 million in allocation money for Josh Atencio. Like, that is a huge add to the Seattle Sounders first team level. And now he can go out and have the career he's going to have. It's not always going to be on the team that brings him through the academy. I think it's unfortunate. I think some of it was timing, right? He has had some weird injuries at the wrong time when it felt like he'd get a chance. Then all of a sudden Jackson Reagan takes over at center back. So he loses that opportunity. And then Obed jumps him. And like, that's just the reality sometimes. Obed Vargas is a better soccer player than Josh Atencio. That doesn't mean Atencio is bad, but Seattle's trying to like compete in the Club World Cup and win a championship. And that's a different parameter and like a different style. And they've got a good roster. Now he goes to Colorado and it's like the perfect fit for him. I think he's going to be a lot of the ball playing in central midfield. So he's going to show his ability to win possession, cover ground. But I also think a lot of this team metronome stuff is going to go through him. He's a decent progressive passer for a guy at that position. He's also versatile. So if it does end up being three center backs, I think he could slot in there, and maybe we find out that that's his best role is as a Steven Moreira style center back who steps into the attack and plays in possession and all those types of things. But he's going to be a starter, and like that's really cool for him. That's awesome. And Colorado clearly is trying to corner the market on these pieces that they think are undervalued around MLS, could have sell on for them, or could stay and be good pieces.
Yeah, and on the back of this, the Colorado Rapids were one of the teams in talks for Sonny Dotson with Minnesota.
Right.
So obviously they're not doing that anymore because they signed Josh Atencio. So I'm curious the knock on of what are the offers for Sonny Dotson? Will he stay like opening days in a few days here. Is he going to be there on opening day, or is there going to be a deal again after his trade request and looking for a new contract? So Colorado was a big suitor for him. Now they got Josh Atencio.
Also, they may have to pop up the standings a little bit because you're talking about a midfield of Josh Atencio, Cole Bassett, and Georgi Mihailovic. Like, ooh, bring on Morocco in the Olympics once again. Let's do this a second time. Let's redux this. We called Seattle. I think I called them a good January camp roster, and Colorado Rapids right now are the Olympic squad for the United States men's national team. A couple big moves alongside Major League Soccer and Brazil. One we've been talking about for a while, Santi Rodriguez. It sounds like it's into its final stages and for a massive number.
Yep. That'll be happening. The reports in Brazil say 17 million. CL Merlo came out today and said it's 15 million. Whatever it is, that is an unbelievable fee. It sounds like they got more upfront for Santi Rodriguez than Columbus did for Cucho. They have the sell on in Cucho with Betis. Like, that deal makes sense, right? But like, that is wild to me that Cucho was Santi's a little bit younger, but we know how much we love Cucho. So that is an excellent deal for NYCFC. It sucks to lose him, but this is kind of right aligned with their previous years of, okay, I guess that they'll bring in some key attackers or key new signings the end of February, early March.
Oh, 5 guys I've never heard of 12 hours before the first game. That's my favorite thing that NYCFC does.
So, I'm worried about them. Really worried about them at the beginning of the season for this. And then the other one is another team that I'm a little bit worried about too. Houston. Palmeiras have agreed a deal to sign center back Micael from the Houston Dynamo. It would be a new club record, a club record that they set earlier this winter for Coco Carrasquilla. That was $3.5 million to Pumas, and Micael is about to be out the door. Really good success story for development and how great Micael has been over the last 2 years, really, but particularly last year. And this is a player who was kind of buried in a youth team, a second team, when Houston initially brought him to their second team and then to their MLS team. This is just an A-plus development story. It sucks, though, because he was one of the best center backs in the league.
Club World Cup cashing out for MLS teams. You're going to get to host games, make a little money, and then you've got all these teams in South America who are like, Club World Cup money, let's go sign MLS players. It's what we think happened with Sebastian Driussi. It's what we think happened with Alan Velasco, the numbers they got. It's definitely part of this Santi Rodriguez move, as well as the Eagle group and all of that, the money that's flowing around. And it's one of these where it's like you can't say no because the numbers probably outsize what it should be, and it's not going to come back. And so you make the move and then you figure it out later. I think for fans, the frustration is, okay, now use that. Reinvest in this team. Like, that money shouldn't go away. That money should be a part of trying to continue to push these teams. It's what Austin has done, and the hope would be NYCFC does the same, and Houston does the same here too. I love Micael. I've had him in my Defender of the Year voting. I think the last 2 years, I had him in my best 11 or second best 11 last year. I think he's been the perfect center back for that team. And like you said, it's like a crazy development story of he was a 2 guy and now he's getting sold back to Brazil for a ton of money. Houston can't say no to this deal because they're trying to generate money to use, but it puts them another step behind going into this season. And like, I don't know how much of a spine you can lose and remain competitive for a team that was already pushing their limits. I think they're going to be better offensively this year because of some of the goal scoring, like Ponce being there for the full year. Your hope is some of your U22 wingers are able to be healthy, and Ellie and all these pieces. And I think Jack McGlynn actually is a good add to a lot of this, but losing Coco, Ache, and Micael and Steve Clark.
Yeah.
It is like a huge turnover from the last 2 years for this team. So I think this one's an unfortunate one to see, even though I understand the realities of what's going on with it. Let's continue on here before we get out of here. We've got a couple big moves, LAFC and Toronto FC. You talked about Under a bit, but it's not the only work that LAFC's done.
Yes, so Chegaz Under is the big one coming in on loan until the summer. They also signed Ukrainian youth international left back, wing back Artem Smolyakov, and Christian Oliveira has been sold to Gremio for, I believe, a fee in the region of $4.5 million with a very, very big sell-on clause. Oliveira has been pushing all winter to leave to probably get a better contract somewhere else. He came back late for preseason. That wasn't really totally big reported, but he got his move, so he follows Bogusz out the door, and LAFC are just reloading again.
He never ended up landing in LAFC. Last year was supposed to be the big year. I think year one, it was like he was a huge piece for them of giving some balance to Bouanga when he finally got his feet set. And then last year was like, all right, this guy now is your second option. He's going to be dominant. It was Bogusz instead. And LAFC does this better than anyone, though, which is they keep the transfer fee, the transfer funds fluid. And so they're able to move players off for similar or more than what they spent. It allows them to go back out into the market and make the next move rather than tanking that player's value and then being stuck with the player and not having the funds to go out and compete on the other side. And all of that, of course, goes with the Under move of like, okay, they're going to have a DP through the summer. If the assumption is you're getting Antoine Griezmann, then you're going to have another DP and like that right wing isn't open for 3 players. So you believe in David Martinez, then you're not going to need Kike Oliveira to be around that at all. And let's finish with Toronto FC because they finally did it. They made a move. Yay, Toronto.
Big signing. They have signed Norway international center forward Ola Brynhildsen from FC Midtjylland. Deals alone with a purchase option. The 25-year-old has 4 caps with Norway. He had 10 goals in 11 appearances on loan with Molde in 24. He wasn't kind of breaking through totally at Midtjylland after the move. So again, he went on loan to Molde, and now he's going on loan to Toronto. This is a good signing. The timing here and why we've getting a lot of questions about Toronto FC. Why aren't they doing anything? Why aren't they making more moves? Why are they being so slow? They were working really hard to Lorenzo Insigne departure. He said he wanted to go back to Europe rather than the Middle East, so they focused on Europe. They brought first division offers from clubs in Spain, Italy, and Turkey. Insigne turned them all down, despite the fact that it would have came with a buyout that would have paid him the vast majority of his money, and he turned them down. So they were holding out the hope, aim, goal, whatever, that they'd have that DP spot open, and then they could fill the DP spot. So they didn't want to sign somebody, and because that's the most important incoming if they had the DP spot open. So they were ready to go with this side of things. They have a center forward, working on a center back, and working on and maybe another one after that too. So Toronto are going to be busy, but this is really good to get Ola Brynhildsen over the line right now. And
for Toronto FC fans that are going to be yelling at me through their speakers, yes, they already brought in Theo Corbinu, so they already had made a move. I was making a joke. So now they've added 2 pieces to the attack. Prince Owusu out the door as well. They needed a center forward. Like there literally just isn't. I think DeAndre Kerr was a starting center forward as of this moment. Not a knock on DeAndre Kerr, but
I just had question marks on the depth chart all winter because I was like, I think they're going to sign a center forward.
Yeah. Argon Wolf asked a good question in the chat, which says if they were going to buy him out, essentially, why not just buy him out? I've been asking the same question the whole time, but this is where Toronto FC stands. They have their 3 DPs filled right now. Robin Fraser in year 1 trying to turn some things around. I think for the fan base, it'll feel good just to start to see new fingerprints on this team. Like you want this roster to be flipped in a way in which it just starts to fit a new vision, a new model away from the old. And so any move, I think, is appreciated for that fan base. Well, this was our quick show on a weekend, on a holiday Monday. Ended up being an hour and a half, and that is on top of the 87 other hours of content we are putting out. So a new season preview episode dropped yesterday. That one was, I have it somewhere, but I believe it was St. Louis, Charlotte, Austin, and DC United. And if it wasn't, those ones are out there. So I know that for a fact. There are 16 teams via podcast available, as well as via video, standalone videos on our YouTube page. I thought that might be a little easier to share for people if you want to sort of send them around to other fans and help people sort of get excited for the season for your own team, or maybe you thought something was interesting about a different team. So I appreciate all of you who have been enjoying it so far. The interaction, the reaction's been great. The comments on the YouTube page are really fun for me to skim through and sort of look through myself about what fans are thinking about their teams. That was a large part of why we wanted to do these local podcasts, was to sort of get the idea on the ground, the feeling on the ground, which is always so much different than what we see from afar at times, and as well to promote some of these shows that I think people should be listening to or people should be following. A lot of these podcasts, they do great jobs just covering the teams. They've got websites. A lot of times it's written as well. For sure, they're all must follows on social media for all of your like up-to-date coverage of this league, which needs to get stronger and needs to be better. And so we're trying to help a little bit, as well as trying to be here ourselves. So we will not go anywhere. This is Monday. Tuesday, we're going to put out some more season previews We have our Golden Boot draft coming up on Thursday with Andrew Wiebe and Matt Doyle. At some point, we're going to have to publish our standings and awards to some extent of what we think is going to happen. I'm sure you've got some stuff cooking at Give Me Sport as well that people can go follow and go read. And everywhere else you want your MLS coverage, we will probably be there at some point. The season is just around the corner. CONCACAF Champions Cup coming up this week, so nowhere for us to hide. We are going to continue to churn out the content and the coverage. We appreciate all of you for being here, and we'll talk to you again pretty soon.